Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Elephant Exposed. I'm your host, CJ Jones, and today we're going to be looking at this video of the judge that had presided over these convicted men now of the ones that killed Mr. Ahmuad Aubrey. Um, what I what stood out for me the most, I saw little segments of it, but what stood out for me the most when it comes to this particular video is um, I admire judges whenever they do statements and things like this. This lets me know, it tells me a lot about their character. It tells me that they truly take their job seriously, and not only seriously, but they take their jobs professionally. And every case that they preside over is not just the run of the mill. And in all honesty, no case really should be taken like that. But this particular judge, he really did, in my opinion, I think, hit the nail on the head. So I'm gonna stop my commentation here. We're gonna go ahead and play it, and hopefully we share the same views when it comes to, I mean, and even if you don't think so, that's fine too. Everybody's entitled to their opinions. I just want to share with my audience, and again, I thank you for watching, and let's take a look at it.
As we understand it, he left his home apparently to go for a run, and he ended up running for his life. He entered the English home at approximately 1:04 p.m. and left that home at about 1:08 on that day. At 1:14, Greg McMichael calls 911 to let them know that there's a black male running down the street. And within moments, Ahmuad Aubrey is shot and killed. The three men that are now before this court chased him in a residential neighborhood for at least 5 minutes in pickup trucks, armed with a shotgun and a .357 revolver. The state mentioned this today about the time period, but I do want to put that time period in context. And the only way I could think to do so may be a little theatrical, but I think it's appropriate. I want us to all get a concept of time. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to sit silently for 1 minute. And that 1 minute represents a fraction of the time that Ahmuad Aubrey was running in Satilla Shores. That's approximately a minute. Again, the chase that occurred in Satilla Shores occurred over about a 5-minute period. And when I thought about this, I thought from a lot of different angles, and I kept coming back to the terror that must have been in the mind of the young man running through Satilla Shores. The jury heard the evidence and returned a verdict. And what a difficult job they had under the circumstances. Without any comment on the verdict itself, I think all counsel will agree and accept that this was a very difficult case to even get a jury impaneled on. And there are issues out there with regard to the jury that were brought up in the press and elsewhere. But I want to give credit to those members of the panel, not because of their verdict, just because of the fact that they were willing to go through the process that they went through with the state, with the defense, and with this court. We're here today to sentence the defendants. In discharging the duty, this court is required to consider all mitigating and aggravating circumstances. The court has considered those circumstances, including but not limited to all aspects of the crimes charged, the past criminal record or lack thereof of the defendants. I've also considered any lawful evidence which tends to show the motive of the defendants, their lack of remorse, their general moral character, and any predisposition to commit other crimes. Now, I think in this case, the record speaks for itself, and the defendant's own words, I think, guide this court with regard to sentencing. Went back through my notes and other resources to pull some of the quotes that we have in this case. I'll start with Greg McMichael. In my opinion, Greg McMichael, very early on in this, tried to establish a narrative. He made comments like, Ahmuad Aubrey was trapped like a rat. Stop or I'll blow your, and I won't repeat it again, head off. He effectively admitted that he wasn't sure what Ahmuad Aubrey had done wrong. Quote, I don't think the guy has actually stolen anything out there, or if he did, it was early in the process. But he keeps going back over and over again into this damn house. Again, back to the narrative. He told Travis, you have no choice. Told another individual at the side or at the scene, this guy ain't no shuffler. This guy's an asshole. Commented that he wanted him, Ahmuad Aubrey, to know that we weren't playing. If I could have gotten a shot at the guy, I would have shot him. Travis McMichael claims he was in shock. But it's interesting because he talks about his concern for his child and his own well-being. Part of this was while the victim was actually laying there in the street. Commented, this is the worst day of my life. Well, I think it's been touched on here today. There were other individuals that were impacted. I'll look at the video of this incident. When I say the video, I think everybody knows what we're talking about, but there was one part of it that struck me as absolutely chilling, and that is, I believe it's in the enhanced video provided by the GBI. There's a frame where I believe Ahmuad Aubrey, it looks to be, if he's 20 yards out, that may be close, 30 yards out. And it's the frame of Travis McMichael lifting the shotgun to fire at Ahmuad Aubrey. And you watch that with context. And when I say context, after hearing the evidence in this case, again, thinking about a young man that had been running at that point for almost 5 minutes, and it is a chilling, truly disturbing scene. And we got there because Travis McMichael's father saw Ahmuad Aubrey hauling down the street and calls out, let's go. At that point, Travis McMichael, despite whatever may have been going on in his life at that time, with regard to family or otherwise, just goes, grabs a shotgun and goes because he assumes that it is the right thing to do. All of these quotes give context, I think, to the video that we saw during the case. And Miss Wanda Cooper-Jones this morning made a statement that I think, when you look at these statements and you see the videos, is very true. And that is, she said, when they could not scare or intimidate him, they killed him.
Absolutely.
There's been discussion about remorse. And I agree with counsel that it is It is dangerous for defendants who have multiple prosecutions against them to make statements of remorse. But remorse isn't something that is simply a statement of regret. Remorse, I think, can be determined by looking at somebody's reaction to difficult circumstances and the reality of the situation that they're in. Again, it doesn't require an apology, and quite honestly, sometimes apologies are made simply to get past problems. Remorse is something that's felt and demonstrated. In this case, getting back to the video, again, after Ahmuad Aubrey fell, the McMichaels turned their backs. It's, again, a disturbing image, and they walked away. This was a killing. It was callous, and it occurred, as far as the court is concerned, based upon the evidence, because confrontation was being sought. I think the statement was made during closing arguments. It's interesting to note that the most violent crime in Satilla Shores was the murder of Ahmuad Aubrey. So sentencing does not generally provide closure. I think Ms. Wanda Cooper-Jones also talked about closure, but I don't find that it really does, and I think that's an unfortunate thing. Because in this case, I think many people are seeking closure. The mother, the father, the community, and maybe even parts of the nation. But closure is hard to define and is a granular concept. It's seen differently by all depending on their perspective and the prism of your lives. Instead of closure, maybe we best see today's proceeding as an exercise in accountability. We are all accountable for our own actions. Sometimes, in today's day and age, that statement is lost upon many. And today, the defendants are being held accountable for their actions here in Superior Court. Today demonstrates that everybody is accountable to the rule of law. Taking the law into your own hands is a dangerous endeavor. I'm not sure how this comes across. I'll say it anyway. I think ultimately, with regard to the murder of Ahmuad Aubrey, it holds us all accountable. I read somewhere, and I don't remember where it was, that at a minimum, Ahmuad Aubrey's death should force us to consider expanding our definition of what a neighbor may be and how we treat them. Mm-hmm. I argue that maybe a neighbor is more than the people who just own property around your house. I also believe that in assuming the worst in others, we show our worst character. Assuming the best in others is always the best course of action. And maybe those are the grand lessons from this case. I will let others spend as much time as they want writing about it and talking about it. But those are my general thoughts with regard to this case and sentencing. That said, with regard to the sentence in this case, as to Travis McMichael, Mr. McMichael, the court sentences you as follows. Count 1, malice murder, life without the possibility of parole. Count 2, felony murder, is vacated by operation of law. Count 3, felony murder, vacated by operation of law. Count 4, felony murder, vacated by operation of law. Count 5, felony murder, vacated by operation of law. Count 6, aggravated assault, merges into count 1. Count 7, aggravated assault. The court sentences the defendant to 20 years consecutive to count 1. Count 8, false imprisonment, merges into count 1. Count 9, attempted false imprisonment, 5 years concurrent to count 7. That is life plus 20. Greg McMichael, the court sentences you as follows. Count 1, malice murder, defendant was found not guilty. Count 2, felony murder, life without the possibility of parole. Count 3, felony murder, vacated. When I say vacated, it's vacated by operation of law in all cases. I'm not going to repeat it. Count 4,
Was it just
vacated.
me?
Count 5,
Was it just
vacated.
me? As we're all watching this, did anyone notice the look on this female's face right here with the curly hair? She literally rolled her eyes as if like she's surprised or so disgusted with with this sentencing of her client. Why do we have that look on our face for? Y'all, this case was a wrap the moment that this video went into court, and possibly even before then. And this is her rule of the land. Like, she's an attorney of that state. So for her to have like this, she's so sickly disgusted look, I'm bothered by her look. But I'll continue on.
Count 6 merges into count 2. Count 7, aggravated assault, 20 years consecutive to count 2. Count 8, 10 years concurrent to count 7. Count 9, 5 years concurrent to count 7. That is life plus 20 years. Roddy Bryan, I do want to separate a little bit because the state is making a different recommendation. And despite the back and forth that Mr. Goff and I had during this case, I do want to point out a couple things that he raised that I think are appropriate to raise with regard to the sentence. As far as the remorse, I think Roddy Bryan stands in very different shoes. It is obvious from the beginning that he questioned the tragedy that had occurred at the scene and was on, I believe, I can't remember whose body cam, but the body cam, in fact, questioning whether or not what had occurred, and then took steps.
Before we get into Roddy's sentencing, did anyone else notice that even during the sentencing of the father and the son, Travis and Greg McMichael, there was nothing about them that showed any signs of like remorse and regret, even as the sentence was being carried out. Mask or no mask, you can tell by a person's posture and their energy about like either they're relieved or they're disappointed or something like that. And the other thing that I noticed was why they're sitting down, them and the attorney. You have Roddy here that's standing up with his attorney. I don't know if that's just courtroom etiquette or if it's not required, but this is the first time I've ever seen something like this. But I'm thinking that that's kind of odd, considering, you know, even when they do dramatizations on TV, you know, and this is after they found you guilty or whatnot, or they're about to say that you're exonerated of all charges. You're standing, because standing is a part of you showing respect to the court. Or at least that's how I've always understood it. So if you know something different, please let me know. I'm going to let this thing roll.
Early on in this process, I think that demonstrated that he had grave concerns that what had occurred should not have occurred. And I think that does make Mr. Bryan's situation a little bit different. However, Mr. Bryan has been convicted of felony murder. Mm-hmm. And I do not believe it can be disputed based on the facts of this case that the verdict was an appropriate verdict based upon the evidence presented, at least. And when I say appropriate, what I mean is legal. Because I believe there's been some discussion about some differences between Mr. Bryan and the McMichaels. There may be some differences, but it does not change the fact that was it not for the fact that Mr. Bryan used his vehicle in a way to impede Mr. Aubrey's course of travel, this may not have ever occurred, and that is sufficient for felony murder. He did cooperate with law enforcement. I will point out Mr. Goff 1710-1B. There's actually a case out of Chatham County that says it would not apply under the circumstances of this case. So the court, recognizing that Mr. Bryan's position is different, again, Mr. Bryan was found not guilty on count 1 and count 2. The court sentences Mr. Bryan to life with the possibility of parole on count 3. Count 4 is vacated. Count 5 is vacated. Count 6, the defendant was found not guilty. Count 7 merges into count 3. The defendant is sentenced to 10 years consecutive to count 3 on count 8 and 5 years concurrent with count 8. Both of those counts, though, will be suspended sentences, which gives Mr. Bryan a life with the possibility of parole sentence. Those are the sentences. The court having pronounced sentence, first with regard to Travis McMichael. Mr. McMichael, you are hereby notified that under the law of Georgia, you are entitled to appeal the guilty verdict of the jury, and if you decide to do so, you must file your appeal within 30 days of this date. You are also informed that you have the right to retain a lawyer of your own choice to represent you on your post-trial motions and appeals to the appropriate appellate court of Georgia. If you cannot afford a lawyer, the court will appoint one for you. You are entitled to and will be given a transcript of all pretrial, trial, and post-trial matters without cost to you if you cannot afford a transcript. You may file a motion for a new trial, or you may appeal your case directly to the appropriate appellate court of Georgia for review. You are also advised that the statute of limitations for habeas corpus in this state is 4 years in the case of felonies and 1 year in the case of misdemeanors. The statute begins to run from the date the conviction becomes final. And just to be clear on the record, I'm going to go through the statement with regard to each defendant. So as to Gregory McMichael, you are hereby notified that under the law of Georgia, you are entitled to appeal the guilty verdict of the jury, and if you decide to do so, you must file your appeal within 30 days of this date. You are also informed that you have the right to retain a lawyer of your own choice to represent you on your post-trial motions and appeals to the appropriate appellate court of Georgia. If you cannot afford a lawyer, the court will appoint one for you. You are entitled to and will be given a transcript of all pretrial, trial, and post-trial matters without cost to you if you cannot afford a transcript. You may file a motion for a new trial, or you may appeal your case directly to the appropriate appellate court of Georgia. You are also advised that the statute of limitations for habeas corpus in this state is 4 years in the case of felonies and 1 year in the case of misdemeanors. The statute begins to run from the date the conviction becomes final. And then finally, Mr. Bryan, you are hereby notified that under the law of Georgia, you are entitled to appeal the guilty verdict of the jury, and if you decide to do so, you must file your appeal within 30 days of this date. You are also informed that you have the right to retain a lawyer of your own choice to represent you on your post-trial motions and appeals to the appropriate appellate court of Georgia. If you cannot afford a lawyer, the court will appoint one for you. You are entitled to and will be given a transcript of all pretrial, trial, and post-trial matters without cost to you if you cannot afford a transcript. You may file a motion for a new trial, or you may appeal your case directly to the appropriate appellate court of Georgia for review. You are also advised that the statute of limitations for habeas corpus in this state is 4 years in the case of felonies and 1 year in the case of misdemeanors. The statute begins to run from the date the conviction becomes final. I don't have a blue or black pen. Is there a blue or black pen down there? Thank you. The court has executed the statement of appeal for Travis McMichael, Greg McMichael, and William R. Bryan. If I could please have counsel and the defendants execute the statements of appeal to confirm they've been given, or the notice has been given.
Right here, we're just watching the legalese. As you can see, the sentencing has already
being done. So I'll pause it right there. Right now, like I was saying before, I don't know if it came out as clear, but this is just the legalese of them accepting what was just written out to them and everything, and then from this uh, point on, uh, they'll just go off and start to serve their time. But getting back to what this particular judge uh, read off, it's very rare that you have these types of judges that just call things the way that they see it. And that's what it was. It wasn't that he made up something. He, in my opinion, he didn't even give his opinion. Uh, he gave his view of what was said by using these men, their own statements. And the only thing he did really was just give their words back to them. And this is what people mean by your own words can and will be used against you in the court of law. It's across the board. It's from start to finish. From the moment that you begin to talk, to speak, to do any of these things, your words can come back to haunt you. Um, and so we're looking at that in this case right now. So um, it is what it is, guys. Um, just like how he was saying, there's a difference between closure and accountability. We all know that whenever it comes to court, or at least by now, if you have been following any of these high profile cases, closure isn't necessarily found, but accountability can be found. And that's all what these victims and the families of these victims are seeking. And, you know, closure, that's something that's totally different. Uh, that's like just being at peace with your soul about something. And, you know, it's more, in my opinion, it's more mental and emotional than it is, you know, physical. You know, and justice is way different, because if there's different kinds of justices. Um, I was listening to um, a movie one day, and this particular actor was breaking down the different kinds of justices that there were. And I cannot go back and re-quote it right now for the sake of time restraint and different things like that. But justice, just to give you like a quick example of what justice would be. Justice in this case is that all three of those men would be looking at the death penalty. That would be justice, life for life, you know. Um, so not even necessarily in criminal in a criminal court will people even see justice like that. But again, it will be the accountability part. We are holding these men accountable for their individual participation in the murder of Ahmuad Aubrey. And I feel like everything is appropriate and everything is fair, according to the law and according to what was actually proven and everything. I feel like this this sentence was extremely appropriate. Um, the judge also hit up um, his thoughts about how do we look at who is a neighbor. Back in what we would like to call grade school, I grew up in a neighborhood that was really about, you know, Christian beliefs coming up and different things like that. And the way that I was taught was, a neighbor is anyone other than yourself. Anyone other than yourself. But of course, you know, you would practice that, you know, and you would be speaking to your fellow classmates and hi neighbor, you know, you'll take what you taught, what you was taught in school, and you'll take it home, and you know, you would share with your parents, and you'd be like, Mom, I know what a neighbor is. And she'd be like, yeah, what's a neighbor, baby? She goes, anyone other than yourself. So that means everybody is a neighbor. And she, you know, depending on the type of mother you have, you know, they'll laugh along with you and, you know, kind of, you know, go along with what you're saying and what you're being taught. And it was like, well, yeah, you know. So, and we were raised in the golden rule era. And what I mean by that was that we went by these golden rules, you know, treat others as you would like to be treated. You know, be nice to them, they'll be nice to you. You know, don't do, you know, don't make neighbors feel bad. You know, all these it's just standardized, humanized rules. It wasn't centered around someone's race, creed, sexual orientation, sexual preference, or any of those things. Just treat humans like humans. And that covers everybody. That covers everything. And it has nothing to do with a particular subgroup that you want to identify yourself with or whatever. It had nothing to do with faith or religion or the lack thereof, because you may not agree on uh, with my practice of my spiritual faith. And I may not live my life according to this particular set or group of people over here. But one thing that we all can agree on is that we're all human, and that we all need to show and display an automatic level of respect, because we don't want ourselves to feel disrespected. And that's regardless of age. And that has nothing to do with status. It has nothing to do with how much money you have or don't have. We all have the right to be treated decently and respectfully. And with that, being said, I appreciate you guys checking this out with me. And if, like I said before, in other recordings, if you like the content, if you like what I'm saying, and everything, yes, please hit that like button, but share it amongst your circle, and I would continue to continue to give you subject matters like these. And that's what we're here for. We're here to talk about it. And so we're here to expose these elephants and to continue to put things like this out there. Other than that, we'll catch you next time. I really appreciate you. Thank you for watching.